Welcome to Forward, a podcast from Hard Knock Press, where we explore the ideas, stories, and conversations that help build better athletes and better people. I'm Kevin Mulhearn, alongside Joe Clemente. Let's get started. Folks, welcome to episode 3 of our podcast, Forward, Better Athletes, Better People. Today we're having a very interesting conversation about something that every parent who has a child playing sports faces, which is how to deal with your child's coaches during his sports journey. Always interesting, always complicated, sometimes really positive, sometimes not so positive. So we're going to start, if we could, I guess we'd like to have you as parent think about one overarching theme every time a decision impacting your child with his or her coach. Is what I'm doing with this coach helping my child, or is it helping me? It needs to be the former, not the latter. And the other issue, which we're going to talk about at length, is when and how should I talk to my child's coach? And as we're going to talk about in a few minutes, the answer to that question varies depending on the age of the child and other circumstances and variables. We're going to go, Joe, into detail about those issues. So the first thing I want to talk about, Joe, with you is coaching your own kid. A lot of invested parents are their kids' first coaches. I know in the Don Bosco Prep baseball program, almost every dad whose kid played varsity baseball at some point was his kid's coach. And I think there was a mom early on. So there's a lot of coaching going on of these high school baseball players by their parents early. If you could, say hello to the audience, first of all, and please tell us in general some pros and cons about the decision to coach your own child.
Hey, everyone. Kev, I appreciate it. Excited about this segment. So going into that conversation is like there's a couple of trap doors there, right? When you first start out as a parent, and again, we've all done this, and I learned firsthand that I have a background, right? So like me as a dad getting into this when we had kids, like my wife had been, hey, this is so exciting. You played baseball at a high level, played football at a high level. She expected me to be like the guy. And when they're ready to go, you're going to teach them and train them. And now, again, for us, like we're in that line of work, right? We own training facilities.
So Franny didn't expect you to teach piano, but she did expect you to teach your kids how to play baseball.
Yeah.
Is that
the
fair?
Piano, yeah. Again, it started out, they go through T-ball, and then they get into coach pitch. And again, as a dad, I just had so much fun being there and just watching the kids just have fun with their friends. And I think what ends up happening with all parents that are in this, as they get more involved, right? Our mindset as parents are, hey, listen, you're famous for this. Do everything at 100%, right? You want to, if you're going to do anything, be great at it, okay? And that's the mindset that we have, right? I would like to think that the majority of us do, okay? So when I started, I was with a buddy of mine, his kids, right? And that's how it starts out, like a bunch of town kids. They're all friends. Let's play. And then as they continue to move on, kids get better. Some kids decide that they want to go play other sports. They want to focus on other things, whatever it might be, okay? So then like that group or that core stays together, and then you start coaching. And then as that core of friends start to do better and become more successful, then you have parents that are outside of that group and kids that are outside of that group that are seeing success, and now they want to be a part of it. So now it all of a sudden went from fun, happy-go-lucky, I'm going to just coach my kid, I'm going to coach my buddy's kid, right? We're going to teach them the right way, but let's let them go out and have fun, and they'll be successful. Now it turns into, hey, wait a minute, we're getting bombarded by people asking us to be a part of the team. Right. What can we build? I'll offer you this. I'll build you a facility. It gets really crazy.
But if I could interrupt for a second, for you, coaching was natural. It was like almost a second skin for you. You knew you were going to coach. You were a coach before you even had kids, right?
Yeah, but here's the thing. This was the first time that I was coaching my own kids.
Right.
I didn't know what it was going to be like as a first-time dad. Think about the reason why this book started, right? What was I mean, I was terrible at it. You know?
I'm sure you weren't terrible, but you learn and improve, and you pick up on things.
Definitely.
I'll tell you, the first coaching I ever did with my son Dennis was Pearl River Mighty Midget soccer, and I know nothing about
That
soccer.
would have been fun. I had to see that.
I never played soccer. I told my wife, who was South American, that I was going to coach Dennis in soccer, and her response was, "You can't coach soccer. You know nothing about soccer. You're going to embarrass me. You're going to embarrass yourself, and you're going to embarrass our son." I said, "Well, they say they need coaches, so I'm not going to
volunteers, right?
Then they're not going to say no." So basically, I coached a bunch of 6-year-olds and enjoyed it until about 8, when my 2 best players on the team were fighting every time they played, physically fist fighting. So I was more referee than coach at that point. But soccer was, for me, coaching soccer was just to be active and get my kid on the field doing some kind of competitive sport, which was positive. But he had fun. I had fun coaching him. And it was something we did before baseball, because I didn't have Dennis play T-ball, because I thought T-ball was a waste of time. I saw all the kids looking at the dandelions and look at the planes overhead, and nobody was looking at the baseball and focusing on the game. I thought it was just counterproductive. So I didn't have Dennis play Little League until he was 8. And at 8, I decided to be Little League coach. At least there I was in my wheelhouse, because I was a high school and college baseball player. So that decision wasn't that hard. But what would you advise parents as far as the threshold decision to become a coach? What are the pros and what are the cons about that decision?
Yeah, I definitely think just to have the relationship, you got to do it, right? Whether you're good, bad, indifferent, you'll figure it out, right? You're an adult. If you have some background, it helps, right? If you know what you're doing a little bit, it definitely makes it easier. But ultimately, listen, okay, you agree with me, you have to. They're so young. Let them have fun. Let them go out and play. You got to teach them the basics, right? You got to teach them how to catch and throw and run. They're going to hit. There's going to be a ton of things that you see that are going to be like, oh man, we got to correct that. But at the same time, you just want them to have fun. As they get older, things get a little bit more locked down, and then you figure it out. But I would tell you, as a coach that has coached at the highest level or played there too, you got to do it, because it's more about the relationship. Your kids love that you're out there. My son, Tony, played basketball, and they were in the Catholic League or whatever it is, and they didn't have a coach.
CYO.
The CYO.
Yeah.
And dude, let me tell you something, man. That's a different animal. And they were like, hey, we need a coach. The director asked me to do it. Kev, that was the hardest thing I've ever done, thinking like I'm just a coach and I'm going to help these guys run out there and play basketball. Dude, I felt so bad for the kids. There was just so much that goes into that. So I do give out a ton of respect. Like I shout out to all the coaches that are coaching other sports, the dads or moms. It's hard, but it's definitely well worth it. Definitely well worth it.
And it's interesting because coaching your own kid also presents another set of challenges, especially as you get older and into the more competitive realm. Inevitably, when you coach your own kid, you're going to be hit with charges of favoritism and nepotism. As sure as the day is long, that's going to happen. If Ken Griffey Sr. was coaching Ken Griffey Jr. at middle school, some knucklehead parent's going to be saying, hey, Ken Griffey's doing daddy ball. That kid's playing center field. What's he doing? Playing center field and batting third. That would happen.
Doesn't matter.
Every parent I've ever seen who's coached his child, especially at the higher levels, is faced with those kind of criticisms, fair or not. And most often they're not fair. I remember one time my dad coached me and my brother from the time we were 8 until 18, until we were seniors in high school. And I remember at the end we were playing Babe Ruth League, and my dad was coaching. My brother and I were both in the lineup. At this point, we were both first-team All-League Poly Prep baseball players. So we had our resumes. We had our a decent history of success in baseball. We were both good players. Both played in college, but decent players. And there were a couple of guys who weren't playing the positions they wanted or in the batting order they wanted. And they started their campaign, what the hell the Mulhearns doing playing on this team? They should be sitting. They're not as good as the guys who aren't playing. And I remember my father just scoffed it off because he had a really tough skin. He couldn't care less what some knucklehead thought about that. But it really bothered me that even at 18, with a history of success in baseball and recognized success, there were still parents out there who were making that accusation of daddy ball and favoritism, and it was hurtful. Now, the way to counter that was just go out and have fun, play your game, and
Be
not
successful.
worry about it.
That's right.
But every kid who plays for his dad as a coach has some iteration of that he has to deal with. Every single person,
Every single one.
and it's a challenge. I don't think it's not nearly as bad at younger ages. When you're coaching your kid in the league 8, 9, 10, nobody really cares that much about results. I shouldn't say that. People do care a lot about results. But at 8, 9, 10, generally you get a little bit of a leeway coaching your own kid. The older the kid gets, the more scrutiny there is on the parent-coach relationship. You agree?
100%.
Yeah.
No, and that's anywhere you go. I have a ton of respect for a friend of ours that we know really well, right? Jeff Becker, right? Think about Jeff. Jeff was my assistant coach at Bosco, right? So he was my assistant on JV. He had Eric, who was a freshman. He was going to be playing varsity, okay? And then he has another son that's coming up that the following year, Nicky, who is an absolute stud too. And now all of a sudden he's trapped, right? I remember him actually stepping away from it because he didn't want it. First of all, he wanted to go see Eric play, but he didn't want that stigmatism of, hey, Becker's in the program, there's favoritism there. No, they were the two of the best athletes to ever come through Don Bosco Prep. It's proven, right? Both drafted in the second round. Hopefully for them, they're going to end up in the big league soon. But
I'm hoping in 3 to 4 years to be able to buy a ticket and watch them both play.
Absolutely. They better send us one. You know what I'm saying?
I'm not going to be that bold.
No, I'm just kidding.
I'll find my way.
Guys, if you're out there, I'm getting a ticket. Send me one. No, I'm just kidding. But so you see that everywhere. No matter what you do, I dealt with it this year, right? For the first time, I was, again, being the JV coach at Bosco. My son was a freshman, okay? It was really hard to be able to separate myself from the freshman program because I didn't want parents saying, oh, your kid's, he's there. But guess what? Whether I was there, and I did keep myself away as much as I could because I didn't want the pressure on the freshman coaches, right? Because I knew that those guys were going to be coming to me next. It's still there no matter what. And that's going to happen from T-ball until they get to college because usually in college, there's only a handful of kids that end up playing for their dad. There's no way around that.
Are there college coaches who coach their sons?
Yeah. I mean, I think like most of them try to stay away from it. Like I know a couple of coaches right now that I've seen at showcases all summer, and their sons have been playing on our team, and they're actually getting recruited by other teams. And like I would ask them, hey man, if this doesn't work out at this school, you think you're going to go play for your dad? And he's like, no. They're like, I'm not playing for my dad. Not at the college level. And I was like, you know what? That's a really unselfish thing, dude, if you think about that. Because he could have, right? He's his dad, but he understands that the type of pressure that he's under, right? Because listen, when you get to that level, you got to win. Varsity baseball, especially around here, you got to win. That's the bottom line. That's how you keep your job. Again, I think.
And as a kid who's playing for his parent, you got to be tough. You got to have a little tougher edge. You want to look just this year at Don Bosco Prep. You have Mike Rooney Jr. playing shortstop and succeeding Eric Becker, second-round pick, Nicky Becker, second-round pick. So not only was he playing a premium position at Don Bosco shortstop, he was also succeeding two guys who, like you said, were two of the best baseball players who ever played for Don Bosco, and both have pretty good major league futures ahead of them, I think. And that's pressure to do that. And I give Michael a lot of credit. He put his head down, he played his butt off, and did the best he could, and had a really good career.
Listen, you and I have known Junior for a long time. He played for me too on JV, and you and I both know he's tough as nails. That kid,
he is.
He is tough as nails, and he had to be.
And he does all the little things right on the baseball field.
He does
the defense, the running, the bunting, anything that needs to be done to help win a game, he can do, and that makes him valuable.
Very.
But he was dealing with the potential stigma of being the coach's son his entire varsity career. And that had to add, there's a lot of pressure on the Don Bosco baseball player to begin with. To have your dad be the head coach, I can only imagine the pressure that Mike Jr. had the last 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
And
absolutely.
I think he handled it really brilliantly. I think Mike and Kelly, no doubt, helped quite a bit with that. But I give props to that kid for handling that. It wasn't easy.
100%.
Yeah. And you're dealing now the same thing potentially with your son, because he's coming up the program. He's going to be a sophomore. These are challenges. Fortunately, I had no affiliation coaching Don Bosco Prep, so I didn't have to worry about that with my own son. But it is something that adds a different layer of pressure on the parent. And I'm sure the parent has the pressure too. When you're coaching your own kid, you might be second guessing yourself. Should I be doing this? Am I doing this because he's my kid, or am I doing this because he's the best kid in the program to help? These are all decisions that are impossible to delineate sometimes. But I do think that the coaches that we know, Mike Rooney and a lot of the coaches who have kids playing for them. I know the Spitaleri kids who played at Glen Rock were tremendous players. Their dads put their kids in because they were going to help the team win, and however they did it. And they were, I think, at times when you're playing in the high school level, you have to be coach first, parent second at some point. And that's not an easy thing to do.
You have no choice, especially at this level.
Really, but your balance is, your heart says parent first, coach second, but your head has to say coach first, parent second. And that's not easy.
The other part of it is you're coaching your kid. Right? I'm sure this Runes has probably been going through this for a long time. You're coaching your kid, right? And all eyes are on your kid and then you, right? So if your kid goes out and it's always amplified. What I mean by that is like an error. Say he makes an error, which is not a big deal, right? What do we usually tell like the kids if they make an error? Hey, shake it off, turn the page, let's get the next one. And again, if it's not your kid or the parents in the stands, like, hey, no big deal. But what ends up happening, right? Mike or Joey or they make a mistake and they're like, oh, see, my kid should be there. He's only there because he's his dad. And you're like, wait a minute, that's
and the same statements would be made if Ken Griffey Jr. struck out.
No matter
He's playing
what.
for his dad as a coach. So look at that guy. Look at that swing. It's such a big swing.
I mean,
he's
terrible.
only playing because his father's the manager.
It's terrible. Yep. And people don't understand, like, we have to manage that as coaches. We actually have to be so on top of that because we never want it to look like there's favoritism, right? We want to make sure that other kids are getting a shot. Owning a facility and having club teams, the one thing that I've learned over all these years, okay, whether it's club teams, little league, high school, baseball, whatever it is, okay, every year, multiple people come to us and they start talking about like, it was daddy ball. It was daddy ball. I'm like, when you're talking about daddy ball, like what happened, first of all? And second of all, the coach that you had, the father that you had that was volunteering his time, what was his background? And like most of them come to me and like, oh, he played varsity baseball and he played some college. I'm like, so he has a background, like he has knowledge, right? Like it could have been really unfortunate. You could have been like Jimbo Bob, like from Farming 101, who's never played a sport or anything like that and had no clue what to do, showed up to volunteer. So you should be like thankful at least somebody that had a background. Now, the thing that parents, and this is going back to the original question you asked me, right? The problem with the parents today is that we are putting a rating on our kids, right? Or on their kids at 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, 11 years old, 12 years old. Kev, you and I both know it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything. You got to get to the big field. It does matter about development, right? And that word is very cliche. Everybody uses development. But the bottom line is their parents have to understand if you have a coach, okay, first and foremost, that cares about your kids, that shows up, right? That wants to see them get better, that allows them to have fun and makes it fun. And your kids want to be there. Like that's all you need to ask for. One of our best coaches in my organization, okay, played high school baseball, played varsity baseball, okay? And he was a local guy. He is the best. PZ is the best. His kids, he retains kids. I can't tell you how many kids come to us and like, we want to play for Coach PZ. We want to play for him. We want to play for him. The guy is awesome. He shows up. The kids love him. He's all about the kids. He communicates with the parents. He involves everybody. They go out. Listen, not everything is about wins and losses. It's about team unity, and it's incredible. That guy, some parents would come to me and be like, he doesn't have the background to coach a high level. Listen, dude, if you think your kid is that high level, then you need to go somewhere else because that's what we focus on, right? Family first, right? Well, the culture is so important.
Two more issues I just want to touch on briefly before you start talking about how to talk to coaches. But when you're coaching your own kid, don't you think that there's an inclination to treat your kid tougher than you treat any other kid on the team?
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah.
You and I both did it. That's where this book came from, right? That's exactly what it is. Because unfortunately, now I'm going to tell you something, and you can agree to disagree, but I know you'll probably agree with me. But we feel the pressure, right? Our kid runs out there, and yes, we were fortunate that they were good, right? But they run out there, they're kids, they're playing, they're going to do all the drills. It's us as parents that are feeling the pressure, right? So now we make it harder. We're almost trying to show everybody, all the other parents, that I'm going to be tougher on my kid to make sure that you don't think it's daddy ball.
And I think that's part of it, but I think the bigger part is that you see some talent in your kid and you want to foster it and nurture it. And you also want to teach him or her how to be tough and how to face adversity and conquer it. I remember once I was coaching Dennis when he was 9, he was pitching, and there was a play pop up right near the catcher, and he tried to run over the catcher, and he wound up scraping his knee. So he's limping around, scraping his knee. He said, "Dad, my knee." I said, "Dennis, it's a scrape." So I don't know if I can pitch. And I got in his face, and the other coach, I remember the other coach, first name was Dennis, and he said, "Oh man, this guy's such a jackass," because I really went after my kid. I said, I used some blue language inappropriately and said,
You?
Yeah,
No.
can you believe it? I said, with a colorful metaphor or two thrown in, that get back on the mound and let's stop the nonsense. And remember, this is a guy who played a championship game with a broken clavicle.
Yep.
So he had a scrape on his knee, and he was my best pitcher, and I wasn't about to pull him out because he had a scrape on his knee. But I also didn't like the fact that he was even asking out because he had a scrape on his knee. And I lit into him a little bit, believe it or not.
Well, it was necessary. There's lessons to be learned, right? There's definitely lessons to be learned.
That was a somewhat productive coaching, although if I could do it over again, I would have been a little bit calmer, a little less expletive filled. I would have been a little nicer about it.
But you would have gotten the same result. You
I
would
would
have
have
just
done
done
the
it a
same
different
thing,
way,
just
right?
a little less crass.
Yeah.
And
that's all we're talking about here.
Yeah, but that was the entirety of Dennis's career when he played for me. I coached him Little League from 8 till he was 12, and I was always much, much tougher on Dennis than anybody else. And I think I've seen most coaches, other coaches, you had the story last week about the boy who had the rattle on his back. He didn't have a head. So I know we're not the only ones of that mindset of that ilk. It is a challenge to coach your own kid, and it's a challenge to be a good parent and a good coach at the same time. Not easy.
It's funny that everything that we talk about relates to pressure, right? It relates to pressure, right? And how we handle pressure as either athletes, like as the kids do, or us as parents or coaches. And that's where everything derives from. So as long as we can handle that, everything becomes much easier. But there's always going to be pressure, and that's okay.
There's the one final issue I want to talk to you about regarding coaching your own kid is how to know when to step aside. And I can relate to you when I realized that I needed to step aside and let guys who knew more than me about baseball coach my child. Freshman year, Dennis had a pretty poor year offensively, but decent. But at the end, he really started slumping. He had a really bad last 9 or 10 at-bats. We're playing the day before Bosco's first state championship game. Mike Rooney's getting his varsity ready for the state championship game. I think it was against St. Augustine in 2022. Yep. And the night before, we're playing at Bosco with Watica. Watica had a game at Bosco. Dennis is an awful game. He strikes out twice. He gets up at the third time, winning run on third base, 1 out, and he takes a really pathetic hack and just hits a weak pop up to first base. And Mike Rooney, who's batting behind him, gets a line drive base hit to left field, so we win the game. Happy day. Now, Mike Rooney Sr., he's got the state championship game. At this point, he has never won a state title. He's had some really good programs, some really good teams. He hasn't won yet. The night before that game, he looks at Dennis and says, "Hey, Dennis, come over here. I want to work with you in the cage for a few minutes." He spends 45 minutes, not 5 minutes, not 15 minutes, 45 minutes working with Dennis on some drills hitting the ball up the middle, hit this side of the cage, hit that side of the cage, try to top the ball here. Just really fine-tuning his swing in a way that I realized this guy knows way more about this than I do. I've been trying to get my kid, and I was a college baseball player. I wasn't a schlub. I knew enough about baseball to coach kids in Little League. But I watched Mike coach my son for 45 minutes there, and I said to myself, I need to step aside and let coaches who know more than me do their jobs and work with my kid. And that was the end of my coaching days for Dennis. And I think it was a blessing. And honestly, I also really appreciate, Mike Rooney has a reputation as a tough guy sometimes and a tough coach. But I told Dennis after that evening, I said, this is a special coach. This guy's going to spend 45 minutes with you, this struggling freshman, the day before his state championship final. I said, that's a special guy who's willing to do that, and a special coach. And stay with this program because he obviously thinks enough of you to spend time with you, to work with you on this. But this is a special place, and if you can figure things out, it's going to be a good experience. And after a really tough freshman year, that was how the season ended. But that was the death knell for my coaching career. So I realized at that point I needed to let go and let Mike and you and Mike Dwyer and Jim Wadika and everybody else, Brian Gialia, everybody else was coaching, just let them do their jobs and coach my kid. And I tried my best to take a step back and just...
It's hard though, right?
Well,
really hard.
We talked about this last week too. It's so tempted to be so hypercritical. Dennis, you got to do this. To this day, it drives me crazy when he takes strikes. Fastballs down the middle, doesn't swing at. Tuesday this week, I watched the game.
Here it comes, Cat. Here it comes.
First two pitch fastballs down the middle, he takes for strikes. I'm going nuts to myself. I'm saying to myself, you can't say anything because you got to read Joe's book.
That's it, man.
But at the same time, the instinct for me is just to swing the bat and be aggressive. And he's 19 years old. He's a starting player in college. He knows what he's doing. And I still have that instinct to push and criticize on something. And he wound up getting 2 walks that game. He was a leadoff hitter. He had 1 hit and 2 walks. And I said, you know what? At the end of the day, he's figuring things out in his own way. He was on base 3 out of 5 times. He had 1 hit, 2 walks. He did his job. He got on base 3 out of 5 times as a 600 on base percentage. He knows what he's doing. I have to just relax and just let him do it. It's so hard though. Even now, it's a challenge. And it was really hard when he was younger. When he was 11, 12, 13, forget it. I didn't have the restraint and maturity that I have now. So I want to talk a little bit about how to deal with your kid's coaches as he or she develops. What is the biggest mistake that parents make when dealing with their child's coach?
So, look, there's a million different ways to look at this. I try to keep it as simple as possible. When you decide to sign your kid up, know who the coaches are, right? What you're dealing with. Talk to them, figure out what their background is. And then at that point, you as a parent need to ask yourself, do I trust these guys? Do I trust these women with my kid? If you decide that, yes, this is where I want them to be, this is who I want them to be with, then you're gonna have to ride it out a little bit and trust what they're doing for your kids, how they're teaching them practices, games, all that good stuff, okay? It's never going to be perfect. Parents have to understand that. It's just never going to be perfect where like how you would treat your kid at home. Does that make sense? You're not going to show up to a field and a volunteer coach again. I keep saying the word volunteer because these people are devoting their time, right? Not getting paid, right? To be able to help your kids develop in youth sports, okay? So we have to tip our caps a little bit to these people. The bottom line is when you're at home with your kid and your regimen is this, you know how it's going to be. That regimen is probably 99.9% of the time not going to be their regimen because they're different, okay? They see things differently. So I think if you trust your coaches and you're happy with what they're doing, just let the kids go out, enjoy themselves, make new friends, right? Get better at a young age, and then let that happen. As they get older, I think that's where you see the difference in Little League, okay, or town, let's call it town ball, town travel, and then your club program. If you feel like your kid is accelerating and is developing, and you think that there's an opportunity for them to do something in that sport and you want to take it to the next level, then you go to the club programs. The club programs are usually run by professional coaches. Now, if you're going to spend that money and time and effort to get your kid to practice and into that program, you have to trust them. Okay, you have to trust the process. It's all about the process at that point.
You really don't want to make a decision. They're weighty decisions. Who your kid's going to play club ball with or travel ball. Those are big decisions. And you can't just make it willy-nilly. You as a parent really need to do your homework. You got to talk to people who have played for this coach. You have to talk to other parents whose son or daughter played in the program. You have to have an idea of what they're all about. When I was looking for a travel ball program, and Dennis is about 13, I talked to a bunch of guys who had played for Jim Wadika, and it was made very clear to me that Jim was about developing kids. That was his primary focus, that he was not a trophy chaser, and I liked that. Although I liked winning too. I liked getting the trophies. When Dennis was playing at a younger age, it was fun to win. But Jim really was known for developing players, especially known for developing pitchers, which Dennis was at the time.
But Kev, you would say that in that program, that the reason why, and I talk to parents about this all the time when they try out for our club, it's the same thing. We're not chasing trophies, but we win a lot because of the way that we develop our players. So the kids that show up, I'm sure the same thing with Jimmy, is that they're willing to work, they show up, they practice, right? They get obsessed with it, and then all of a sudden you put a group of 12 kids together on the field that do that all the time, and then they worry about their job when they're out there, and you win.
And they're also selective sometimes in who they choose to be on their teams. I remember Wadika had some tryouts where they had 25 kids show up, and I think they only selected 5 or 6 kids to play on the program. They had that kind of ability to be that kind of selective.
Yeah.
And once they figure out, okay, these kids or somebody who we want to be in the program, then they just go full bore development and you're off to the races. One of the things too about the Wadika, Joe and Jim, but what they both did, they did not brook any nonsense. If kids behave poorly, go find another team. It was zero tolerance for prima donna behavior for kids who treat other kids on their own team poorly. Doesn't tolerate it at all, and I love that. I don't care whether you're the best player on the team. If you're a jackass and you're acting disruptively and making the experience not fun for your other teammates, bye-bye. We don't need you. We'll figure it out some other way.
There's an old saying in this space: shoot the headaches early. You know what I'm saying? Get rid, whether it's the kid or the parents, like, because it's not just about the one kid. It's about the group of kids, the team, and the parents.
You run the Diamondbacks organization, correct?
Yes, sir.
And do you aspire to do the same thing with respect to the kids' behavior? If a kid,
yeah, we don't tolerate it. So when they sign up with us, I have a whole form, like rules and regs. They got to agree to it, but it's like a parent and player form, right? Because it's not just about the kid.
So is there a parent code of conduct?
Yeah, there is.
Sign it.
100%.
And how often do the parents breach their promise?
More than I'd like to say.
Right.
But that's a conversation. That's a conversation.
What happens when that occurs? You have a conversation with the parent and say, you're not doing what we asked you to do, and here's why, and we need you to change.
I treat them like an adult, right? We have a conversation. If they can change it, perfect. If not, then I tell them, like, listen, here's what it is. This is the culture that we've created. We've told you ahead of time. It says it in black and white. If this is something that you don't feel like you're going to be able to do, then you just need to go look for another club.
Have you had kids walk away from the program because they were unwilling or unable to make the changes you asked for?
I wouldn't say that I've had kids walk away. I've had kids that I've had to let go, and parents that I've had to let go. And there's only been a couple of instances, because listen, we do this for the kids, right? Jimmy too. This is all about the kids. Okay, so like I would never take out something that the parents are doing on kids, right? Unless it got so crazy that there was no other choice. And I think in 25 years that I've been doing this, I probably had to do it like twice, that I had to pull a kid because of the parent. but it was to the point where it was toxic. Like they just were not mentally right about it. And what happens is you'll talk to them, right? Or you know that there's something going on, and then they spread it, right? Because what they do is they stand there with the parents. My kid. And then all the parents are like, what are they doing here?
Yeah.
This is not.
It's like a virus.
It's a virus.
Right.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And once that starts to spread, like it's bad. You got to end it before it starts.
And part of the development of a child athlete is to teach the boy to become a man and the girl to become a woman. And part of that is standing up on your own 2 feet and advocating for yourself. And that's, I think, sometimes the hardest thing for kids to do, to actually have conversations with adults about their sports career, about their sports year, and certain things happening on the field that impact them. It's really hard for a kid to go talk to a type A, strong personality coach and say, hey, coach, can I talk to you about this? And have that kind of serious and intense conversation about certain things.
It's intimidating, right?
And also sometimes a kid could be wrong, and sometimes kids can be deluded, and sometimes parents can be deluded. A parent could come in there and say, I want my kid playing shortstop at Don Bosco, and Eric Becker's and Nikki Becker are there in the program at the same time. And the parent might think, my kid's the next Derek Jeter. He's the best. And sometimes there's a break between reality and dreams and perception. Sometimes your perception of your child could be really warped. For me, when Dennis first started Don Bosco, the whole thing was he's got to get a Division I scholarship offer. That's everybody who goes to Don Bosco comes in thinking, I'm going to get a Division I scholarship offer to play baseball. At some point, we realized that Dennis was going to be a better fit in the Division III program. And it took a little bit to actually make that adjustment to say, okay, he's going to play Division III. We're going to try to get him to go to a really good school and a good academic school where he can play baseball in a really good program and succeed in that way, not in a Division I program. And once we made that decision, though, I have to say, couldn't be happier with that. But it wasn't the easiest decision to make, to actually say, we had a bunch of showcase tryouts at various Division I schools. Dennis went up to Columbia and tore it up. There was a showcase of 25, 30 kids, and I think he probably had the best performance of any of the players on the field that day. I think probably still the best catch he's ever made in center field, going back about 120 feet and just diving and laying out for an unbelievable catch. He had a great showcase, and that was probably the only great showcase he ever had. And even then, there was not a whisper from the coaches, no follow-up, no great job, Dennis, no nothing. He was a 5'9" outfielder, batting ninth for Don Bosco Prep. They had no interest at all. And I realized at the time, okay, got to rethink this whole process and the journey. And for Dennis, now he goes to Union College, which is a great school, plays for John Muller, who's a great coach, who built a really strong culture. So he found his home. He found his Division III home, and really happy about it. And I remember talking to Mike Rooney about this, about where's Dennis going to go play in college. And he said, Kevin, you know what? He could play Division I maybe, but he probably wouldn't start at first. It would be a struggle. He's not going to be a standout by any means. You really should start thinking about really good Division III colleges. And he said that, and it was something that sunk in a little bit, and I thought about it. I said, he's 100% right. We've got to go start looking at the good D3 schools. And that was an experience that was made and developed by good communications between coach and parent. Mike could have blown smoke up my ears and say, "Oh no, we're gonna go hit that Harvard Yale scholarship, play D1." And he didn't do that because it wasn't realistic at the time. And I appreciate the candor and I appreciate the sound advice, but that's a parent-coach conversation. When kids are in high school, there's different development stages for kids. You're really not going to have a kid talk directly with a coach when he's 7 to 10, right? And he's not going to say, "Hey, coach, why am I playing left field when I should be playing shortstop?" A 7-year-old's not going to have that conversation with a coach. So parent has to have a conversation. If you really legitimately think the coach is not treating your kid fairly when he's 7 or 8 years old, you as a parent do need to have a civil conversation with the coach at that point, right?
Yeah, I would just think it's very calm, right? It's more of like an opinion. Coach, where do you see my,
See, calm is the magic word.
Calm.
See, again,
Long ride home.
But calm is not always easy.
No.
And we care so much about our kids, and we want to see them succeed. And you feel, especially if you think a coach is treating your kid unfairly, it's hard to be calm.
That's where people get crazed. But again, as parents and adults, we need to know, hey, like they're 7, 8, 9, 10 years old.
At what age do you think a kid should take responsibility for having communications with a coach about playing time, lineup, order, issues like that?
So look, I think it varies, right? Nowadays, middle school gets a little crazy, right? I think coaches, for the most part, respect athletes that can come to them and feel confident enough to have a civil conversation and just be able to inquire, ask questions.
Well, let me ask you a question on that, though. Are there coaches who are going to react poorly to being challenged by a kid about playing time?
100%. You're probably going to get more than not, right? That's how you're going to know if there's favoritism, like what's going on, where the relationship is between those other players and that coach. There's always a link somewhere.
It's such an extraordinarily hard thing. We always go back to Don Bosco. That's where our history lies.
Sure.
But I remember talking to Mike Rooney right before Dennis's senior year. And I said to him, Mike, you have 16 players who are capable of starting on a varsity baseball team, 16 really excellent players. You can only start 9. How the hell do you do it? How do you make those decisions? And he looked at me and said, it's really difficult. It's hard, not easy. And at the time, my kid was in that 15 mix. I didn't know where he was. I didn't know whether he was 8 or 9 or 12, 13. Don't know. And I felt I really couldn't weigh in on that. I didn't weigh in on that. He was going to make a decision as to play him or not to play him. That was the coach's decision. I really had no ability to add my input there in a productive way, so I didn't. But I knew and I empathized with Mike about the difficulty that he was facing, and having so many damn good kids and having so few kids who could play at one time. If there were 17 kids in the lineup, Bosco would do really well because we have 17 kids that can all hit. But there's only 9 kids who can play at the same time. And I can only imagine if you're one of those kids who are outside the 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, not getting regular playing time, that's got to be really hard, especially if you know you're good and then you're capable of playing and performing at a high level in high school. So, but like you said, sometimes I guess you're stuck between a rock and a hard place because sometimes you go to a coach and he's not going to react well to the fact that you're making suggestions about playing time. But it's really on a case-by-case basis. You never know what you're going to get on that.
No, but I'm going to tell you flat out, the coaches that you can communicate with, like we have an open door policy pretty much with our kids right at Bosco. They know. Come talk to us, right? No issues. It's still intimidation. You know what I'm saying? It's still intimidating, I should say, that for a young kid having to come talk to a coach. I get that. But we try to especially Runes lets everybody know, if there's an issue, come talk to us, okay? We respect that. The coaches that you go to that feel threatened, there's a reason why they feel threatened. There should never be a situation where you can't go talk to your coach about playing time or situation, and then they should be threatened.
Well, and let's be honest, Joe. Sometimes they're threatened for good reason.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're threatened because they know that Johnny is the better player than Jimmy, but
they're not playing him.
Jimmy's dad is an alum and is donating $100,000 a year to the school.
100%.
Jimmy's going to be playing, and Johnny's stuck holding the bag.
Listen, I haven't seen that at Bosco, but I know that it happens, and I know that it happens at pubs too, right? The public schools in the area and stuff like that. Parents will do some crazy stuff to make sure that their kid is on the way, but ultimately, when you get into a program that you have a ton of good kids, they're always competing, right? They're always competing for the spot, and whatever the nod is that one kid got over another kid, it could be very minimal, right? It could be the way that they run out to the field. It could be the way that they handle themselves outside of baseball, like outside, of the actual game, and what they're doing in class. And there's so many different things that play into it, especially at this level. But going back to that question, if I can't come talk to you and you're my coach, right? As a kid, when I come home and I tell my parents, hey, I tried talking to him. I tried talking to the coach today. He was like stuttering and just like all over the place, and he wouldn't answer me. And like, like,
So
this
when that
guy's full of-
when that happens, what is the parent's role? If a kid tries to talk to the coach and gets shut down, is that time for the parent to interject and have a conversation with the coach?
I think it's fair to say an email, right? Like you can send an email and say, "Hey, coach, just following up. I heard little Johnny came in and tried to talk."
Unfortunately, email is going to most often wind up in the circular wastebasket.
Yeah, but at least that's the first line of communication, right? So that like it's written, like there's nothing that's going to be threatening about it. It just can be like, "Hey, coach, I'm inquiring. Did you guys have a conversation? I was just curious because you didn't really tell me much about it, but you know all about it. We're not stupid.
Right.
We ask questions that we already know the answers to. Because if you don't, then you're not on top of it."
Have you ever made a change in the lineup because a kid or a parent complained to you about it?
Never. But I did give the reason why. I always have kids come to me. Look, I had 22 kids this year on the roster. 22, right? I can play 9 guys. I can hit 10 because of their sub-varsity, right? And we rotate guys. Vic and I would tell you, and anybody else will tell you the same thing, I think, that we rotate kids in as fast as we can, as much as we can, because they're all talented, right? Our job, like for me, is to get them ready for varsity. Right? I can't get them ready for varsity sitting on the bench, right? And the kids that were selected, they're all talented. And like before I go out, like when we do our huddle, right, to get these guys ready to go, and you can ask Dennis. I would say to everybody, I would say, "Hey, starters, your job today is to get the non-starters in as fast as we can. Go put up 8 runs, get 3 at bats, right? Get your 3 at bats, go put up 10 runs, whatever it might be. Let's get these guys in the game." Okay. And they're all like, yeah. And for that, for me and for Vic, right? So everybody knows my assistant coach is Vic Santos, right? From Santos Baseball. So he's phenomenal, right? Played in the big leagues for 9 years. One of my best friends. His program's tremendous. I want to give him props because without him, we're not as successful as we would be. And like one of the things that we talk about is about our kids playing for each other, right? It's not about playing for me. It's about them wanting to help each other. And that's the culture, right? So Vic and I talk about it all the time. We're like, "Hey guys, you want starters? Get the non-starters in as fast as you can." And they're like, and they get excited about it because they want to help their kids get in. I actually have kids come up to me like in the 5th, 6th inning, they've already had 3 at bats, and they're like, "Hey, coach, like it's like because I'll be telling guys to get loose, and they're like, 'Hey, if you want to give Johnny my at bat, I'm totally cool with that.' No, I don't need their okay, but for just like their mentality, that's a great teammate, right? I'm okay with so-and-so taking my at bat because he's my teammate. He's my brother."
So how can a non-starter earn playing time on a team that you coach? Obviously, talent is part of the equation. You would think attitude, effort, preparation, those are all issues that are going to help. But what is the driver for you as far as making the determination, okay, I'm going to make a switch, especially when you would understand it's a zero-sum game. Somebody is going to play, then that means somebody else is going to sit. How do you make those decisions?
So our determination is definitely all the things that you said, plus like we watch our guys at practice. Like, I mean, that's one of our secrets, right? Don't tell anybody, right? But one of our secrets is like how you practice is big for us, right? Especially for Runes and those guys. If you're going to go out there and you're going to dog it, then you're just going to stay right where you are, right? But if you're going to go out there and every day we see you getting better and you're busting your hump to get better, then you're going to get an opportunity. And again, unfortunately, at our level, the skill, like it's close, right? It's very close to everybody. But there's always those intangibles of the kids that do start that put them over the top. Right now, what are you going to do? You have a kid that goes in there and he's hitting 400, and now you're going to take the kid who was behind him and just all of a sudden be like, "Oh, you know what? He didn't earn it." You can't do that either, right? If the kid's doing his job. But our mindset is we want to get kids in the game as fast as we can. Now that's at a sub-varsity level, right? JV, it's a little easier to do. At the varsity level, it's much harder to do, right? Because you're in Coach Rune's, any of the varsity coaches in the area, anywhere in the country, right? You're picking the top 9 guys that you think that day is going to go out and is going to give your team the best opportunity to win, because it's not about just you, just the team. It's also about the school you're representing, right? That's the most important thing, right? The name that you wear across the chest, the name on the front is way more important than the name on the back. Again, you're making a decision as a coach, not only for players, teams, right? All these things that come into play. I know that parents, and I say this to parents wholeheartedly, I know that you think that it's really easy to walk out to the field and like, this is the lineup. There are so many sleepless nights, okay? Countless hours that we talk as a whole, as a group. And I'm not just talking about Bosco. This happens to all of the programs that have been successful, even if they're struggling, right? There's a process, right? It's not just cut and dry. Like, I'm just, oh, you know what? I just saw someone, I know him since he's been 11. He's going to run out there. It doesn't work like that. I think that's where one of the things that parents, they need to understand that again, I keep going back to trust the process. It's the truth. There is a process for all of this, from the time that they start and to the time that hopefully that they get to play in college.
Well, the interesting thing is, it seems to me that as a child grows and becomes a man or a woman, he has to grow as far as his communication skills, and that's a big part of it. And when that happens, the parent's role recedes. You have less impact, certainly with coaches. In high school, you really don't. I can imagine it's really not a great look for a parent to go to a coach and say, "Hey, why isn't my son playing?" And I think coaches would mostly resent that if that did happen.
So I'm going to make you laugh because you were there, right? You were there. So you were always one of the guys in the stands, right? And again, but you are far enough away from your kid. You're just watching the game, okay? You probably sat the furthest from all of us, okay? How many parents, how many people tried to nestle in to get closer to their kid, right? Trying to like hover. That's not doing you any good, right? Because as coaches, I'm gonna tell you something else that's really funny. At tryouts, as stupid as this sounds, we'll be at tryouts, right? Because we're in the Northeast, it's cold, right? But we probably get out, fortunately for the last couple of years, we've been out maybe the last 3 days of practice, of tryouts, okay? And there's always one parent sitting in the stands filming the tryout. And all of us,
is that right?
Listen, I'm telling you, you could bet on this.
I never went anywhere near a tryout.
Never went near a tryout,
No,
okay?
that was probably
Games
smart.
are one thing, right? That's what I'm saying. They hover.
Yeah.
But seriously, man, there's always one. They would show up dead center of our stands. You know where our stands are?
Yeah, I do.
And the camera is out, and all of us would stand there and be like, who are they related to? Who are they related to? And it would always be an athlete. And again, I'm not knocking anybody, but it would always be like a borderline athlete, whether they're going to make the team or they're not going to make the team. Okay. And it could be a bubble guy, but you understand why they're doing that. They're doing that. They're filming it because if they get cut, they want to be able to go in and be like, listen, I saw the video and I have a video and my kid, he hit a hard ground ball to the third baseman. You're like, what are you talking about?
So basically you're saying that if you see the parent of a bubble boy filming, that bubble's about to burst.
Just, yeah, do me a favor. And it's not a good scenario. Let's put it that way. But listen, that's what happens. That's what happens.
It's, again, and I just want to touch really quickly on this. As far as college, when the kid starts playing in college, there really is never any time for a parent to talk to a coach about issues involving the game. A parent can never or should never talk about playing time, about position, about batting order. Those are conversations that absolutely have to be between coach and player, correct?
Never. It is, you're at that point, you're a young man, young woman. You got to have enough confidence to be able, like, you're there playing for that coach, right? Before you need to tell your story for sure, but I have to tell you something. We were at a tournament a couple of weeks ago, real quick, and this is a true story. And I had a bunch of kids. They're getting recruited. There was like 40 coaches there. No joke, okay? Watching all the kids warm up, all that stuff, okay? All of a sudden, one of the parents brought some stuff, walked over to the dugout, okay, called their son. The son walked over, forgot all of their stuff. No joke, like a bag, the whole nine. Walked away and left, okay? I'm standing there. All of a sudden, 2 seconds later, one of the coaches from a big school called me over and they're like, hey, coach. They're like, who was that? And I was like, oh, this is bad. This is bad. I was like, should I make up a name?
Bubbles
like,
about to bust.
And I was like, he was like, hey, it was number such and such. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, listen, he's a good kid. I was like, can't control the parents. He's like, yeah. He's like, that's not going to work. He's like, I'm sorry, man. I was like, I totally understand. And
so you're saying the parent basically blackballed the kid?
Done.
Right,
I
I
saw the coach draw a line right through the kid's name. And the worst part about that is that there are 40 guys sitting together, 40 coaches sitting together. You know as well as I do that they're probably asking him why because they're all friends, why he went and talked to me, or they knew why he was going to talk to me, and then that took care. Can you believe that? Just because kid forgot his bag or whatever, and he shouldn't. Again, you got to be responsible. But listen, in the coach's mind, like they're bringing you on. They got to trust you. They got to trust you. So I know going into that, talk to me a little bit about what went down what you figured out this year with Dennis. I think that was a really inspiring situation.
Well, it was interesting because, and again, just like high school with Don Bosco, Union College has a bunch of great players. And I'm talking about kids who don't play, who were probably the best kid or the second best kid on their high school team. So the coach is faced with a conundrum every single time he writes out the lineup. There are 25 kids. I'm counting position players now, not pitchers. There's probably about 20 kids, 22 kids who are all really good baseball players.
Super talented.
And
right?
you could see this maybe 5 or 6 kids who clearly are a bit cut above talent-wise. But the bottom three, the 6, 7, 8, 9, are close. You could pick a handful from this group, a handful from that group. It's really hard, difficult to make the adjustment as to who gets playing time and who doesn't. And for Dennis this year, he started off, he didn't play at all the first couple of games. He had a really big hit. He came in as a pinch hitter in the tie game in the 9th inning. He got a game-winning hit against SUNY Purchase, like the 4th or 5th game of the season. So happy day. His teammates mob him, and he's all happy.
Big.
He made his bones with the program.
Yep.
But then he sat for 17 games. And I was starting to pull my hair out. We went down to Florida. He was one of the several kids who didn't play at all in the Florida trip. So I was there for 4 or 5 days in the Florida trip. I was so steamed, and I wasn't mad at the coaches. I was just frustrated at going down and not seeing my kid play. It was hard to watch him warm up the left fielder every game. That's what he was doing. He'd say, what do you think of the game, Dad? So Dennis, you hit that kid in the chest 3 times in a row. That was awesome. That was the peak of his contribution.
That's great.
But we used to joke about it. But he was getting down at the end of the run where he wasn't playing. He called me up one time and said, Dad, I have to tell you, I feel like I'm disappointing you. And I said to him, Dennis, don't ever think that. I said, I couldn't be more proud of you. And I don't care whether you play every game. I don't care whether you sit the rest of the season. I don't care if you ever get another at bat. I said, I'm extremely proud of you and how hard you worked and what you're doing. So don't worry about it. You're not disappointing me. Don't even think that for a second. So, but it upset me that he was upset about not playing.
Of course.
And I had a conversation with my friend Joe Clemente. I gave you a call. I said, Joe, here's the situation. What should I do? Should I call the coach and talk to him about it? And you said, absolutely not. I said, you cannot have that conversation with the coach. You just can't. And I said, okay, what should Dennis do? He needs to have a conversation with the coach, say, just want to let you know I'm here. I'm ready to make a contribution. Just let me know what I can do. So Dennis goes in his own way, I guess, had that kind of conversation. And Coach Butler listened to him respectfully. He was nice about it. He didn't take umbrage at being questioned by a kid about playing time. And I think my son is not uber aggressive on that. It wasn't being nasty about it or critical. It's just telling the coach, hey, don't forget about me. I want to play, and I can play, and I want to help the team. Coach puts him in a game or two after. He gets a couple of hits, and he stays in the lineup the rest of the season. It starts 17 out of the last 18 games and winds up hitting over 300 for the season. Good things come to those who wait. But the lesson to that story is that Dad had nothing to do with that conversation, and I'm really happy that I called you. I was really tempted at that point to call Coach and say, hey, what's going on? And I was going to try to do it in a nice way, and I wasn't being overly critical, too. I could tell you the kids who don't play on the team are really good. I can tell they're really good. It's hard to crack a starting lineup in college baseball. It just is. And I don't hold anything against any of the coaches at any period of time. They have a lot of tough decisions to make. They're hard decisions. I want to see my kid play. I want to see him perform. And I also understand that sometimes that's what's not in the cards. And sometimes there are kids better than your kid. That's how it is, too. And you have to deal with that sometimes as well. Who knows what next year brings? And Dennis could start every game. He could start no games. Anything is possible. I have to tell you, I've come to peace with that, and I realize that the most important thing is the school he's going to and the people he's meeting. And the one thing that I really give props to Coach Mulhearn, he's developed such an amazing culture that those kids really root for each other. They have each other's backs. It's a level of support that it's extraordinary to watch and inspiring. And it's something that whether Dennis is an all-league player next year, which is quite possible, he's got it in him, or he rides the bench for 3 more years, at the end of the year, he's going to have a great 4-year experience at the Union College baseball program. And part of it is that Dad figured out to take a back seat and let the young man do his own talking for himself, do his own advocating for himself. And the one thing we talk about, once you talk to a coach, I think maybe you talk to a coach about health. There are health issues. Maybe it's a conversation can be had about grades issues. Grades are slipping. There are some times I think that are appropriate to have a conversation with a coach, but certainly never, ever about playing time, about playing time decisions, about lineup decisions, about what position the kid plays or doesn't play. Those are conversations that have to be left to the child and to the player and the coach. It's just how it is. And I'm really happy I listened to your advice because I was so tempted. I was getting frustrated. But it's a hard thing.
Yeah, it's think about all the talent there, right?
Yep.
2 things. One, you would have to agree that Dennis going in and having that conversation with Coach, that helped him, right? Just be more confident, right? To be able, because listen, we know Dennis. I love him. He is the nicest kid in the world. That's hard, right? And that's not just for him, but any player that has to go in there and talk to a head coach. You know what I'm saying? And because you don't know what the response is going to be.
It's about asserting yourself as a man and assuming control and agency of your manhood. And that's not an easy thing sometimes, especially when we teach our kids to be so deferential and respectful towards their elders.
Of course.
To go in there and have a conversation that's at all challenging is hard. I remember, for me, I wrote about this in Ghost of October. One of the seminal moments of my young adulthood was when I challenged my Muhlenberg College baseball coach. It was middle April, freezing. I was riding Pine, and he said, "We don't have a first base coach. We need someone to coach first base." Bucko was my nickname. Was Bucko. He said, "Bucko, go coach first base." I got up and I yelled out, "Coach, I'm a player, not a coach." And I sat down, and I had Jesse Marone, my teammate. I remember he looks at me like, What the hell you just do? Because Coach Beidelman was a tough guy. He wasn't going to take kindly to that. I was never called Bucko or Kevin the rest of my career at Muhlenberg College. I was Mulhearn, and Mulhearn with disdain. But it was something that I needed to do to assert myself as a man.
You got to always, if you don't believe in yourself, nobody else is going to. And the last thing I'm going to touch base with, you were talking about how hard it is, like talent-wise, okay? I want you to, and again, I know we always revert back to Bosco, but this could probably touch all the schools in the area where we're at, okay? Think about this. Coach Runes has 25 kids, 26 kids every year, okay? In order to go out and compete, there's probably 15 or those 16 kids that we were talking about that have to continue to cycle through in order to be competitive and win. Okay. But nobody talks about the last 10 or 12 that still get offers and still play in college, even though they didn't step on the field. Okay. Yep. So when the parents that are watching this, talking about maybe the Big North, parochial, whatever, high level public school, the bottom line is your kids are playing, and yes, they all want to be out on the field. They all want to compete. But ultimately, at that point, I would think that most of them, the majority of them, maybe not all, but the majority want to play in college, right? So if you're in a program that even though that you don't start, you get limited playing time, but you're still getting signed in the summer, because that's where it's all going to happen anyway, and you're still getting an opportunity to play in college, that kind of speaks for itself, right? People respect where you're at and what they're doing. That's worth its weight in gold.
Well, college coaches know that Don Bosco program is the top program in the state. And I think the college coaches know that the Don Bosco kids are taught the right things. They're going to hustle all the time. They're going to make the little play. They're going to get the bunt down when they need to get the bunt down. They're going to do the little things that separate winning from losing.
Yeah, they don't have to reteach them when they get there.
And the college coaches know that, I think.
100%.
Especially in the pitching. To be a pitcher for Don Bosco, it's really difficult. There are some excellent pitchers who go through that program who get 7, 8, 10 innings a year. It's hard. It's hard to crack that 20, 30, 40 inning barrier. It's really difficult. And there are some really good pitchers who I think are going to have great college careers who had minimal runs as pitchers at Don Bosco.
Yeah, but the college coaches know when those kids came into the program or they're coming into the program, like they know what they're getting. They know that these guys are going to be prepared.
So just to wrap up, Joe, as far as the whole relationship between parents and coach, is it fair to say that the ultimate goal is independence, how to teach your kid how to be an independent man or woman through sports? Is that fair?
Yeah, that's more than fair. That's what we're doing here, right? We talk about better athletes, better people, right? That's our MO here. Ultimately, it's getting them from childhood to adulthood and being able to be good people and have confidence in themselves, right? That's what we're doing here.
And the road from childhood to adulthood is often fraught with peril. It's not the easiest. It's not a straight line walk, for sure.
Hills and valleys.
Right.
Hills and valleys.
But I think sometimes the deeper the valley, the higher the hill.
Absolutely.
In some respects, right?
That's true. That's good. I like that.
Yeah.
We're gonna keep that one.
I guess that's why they pay me the big bucks.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Can you tell our audience one thing that you like them to remember from today's conversation? One closing note?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I have to touch on one thing, and again, it happens to all parents, right? One, you got to make sure that you trust the coaches that you're with, like that you're giving your kids, like that are going to be playing for, like they're wherever you're going to put them in the programs. But most importantly, teach the kids to have trust in their coaches as long as they're where they need to be. And if you get to a situation where you feel like there's a conversation warranted, allow the kids at a certain age, allow them to be able to go speak to the coaches first. And if that's not a situation that is good, then you can go in and you can intervene, right? Especially at a young age. I would say like probably 8th grade and down. Anything over that, once you get to high school, allow your kids to be assertive. Go and talk to the coaches if they think there's a situation. And from there, that'll lead the way. But coaches, I'm telling you right now, especially at the high school level, coaches will respect players that come and talk to them first before the parents do. That is 100%.
Another fun conversation, Joe. I always enjoy talking with you.
I love doing this with you, man.
To our audience, I would say keep moving forward. See you next week. Another episode of Forward. Better athletes, better people. Have a great day. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Forward. If today's conversation helped you, we'd love for you to subscribe and share it with someone who cares about developing better athletes and better people. Forward is a Hard Knock Press publication where we're building books, conversations, and ideas that challenge conventional thinking and help people grow. Until next time, keep moving forward.